This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
Hey everybody, welcome into the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski, I'm Samantha Croston, and we are two Syracuse reporters with a baseball podcast. Thanks so much for being here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm sure you guys probably saw that announcement, but we officially hit 1 million all-time views. Thank you so much, as always, for your support and the road to 10,000. It might end here with all the things we're about to say, beginning with this. Happy Bobby Bonilla Day to all who celebrate. Let's go.
Bobby Bonilla Day, July 1st, the New York Mets writing out a check for about $1.2 million. I do have a fun fact about Bobby Bonilla Day that I would like to share with you all because this is a day that if you're a Mets fan, you know about Bobby Bonilla Day. This is a holiday. It is something you have marked. Everybody knows Bobby Bonilla Day is July 1st. Well, you might not know that Bobby Bonilla, even though the Mets have to pay him every year from 2011 to 2035, 10 more years, I should add, of the holiday.
A decade.
Bobby Bonilla is what allowed the Mets to essentially get David Wright. And that is something that I did not know prior to today and that I'm interested in sharing. So in 2000, they deferred his contract, obviously. With the payroll that was left available, they traded for Mike Hampton, who was the eventual MVP of the NLCS. And when he left in free agency, they got a compensatory draft pick and they picked David Wright. So the more you know.
I mean, listen, I guess that's one way of looking at it.
I mean,
the other way of looking at it is that the Mets got bamboozled.
Hoodwinked.
And hoodwinked.
Led astray.
I mean, wow. It's just a great story. It's going to continue to be a great story, and I look forward to celebrating it with you every year. It'll be like a holiday at some point where we get to take off work for it.
That'd be fun.
Probably not, but
July
yeah.
1st. Mm-hmm. I'm just warning everybody now, if you can't tell by my demeanor, that I have been waiting to unload on the New York Mets for about a week's time since the last time we spoke to you all. This is, welcome to the county of rock bottom in the middle of Panic City, okay? Mm-hmm. I am ready to crash out.
I mean, at this point, she's the mayor of the things she just described. I just want you guys to all, it's important to note that sometimes if Ashley gets into an emotional state, if she's laughing, she'll begin to cry. That's already happened.
And I may be laughing because I'm upset.
That's already happened prior to the filming of this episode. She said the word Siberia at some point. It may go off the rails, and this is the trigger warning.
I am putting trigger warning at the beginning of this episode. Do not continue if you are not ready to hear me be in a negative headspace about the New York Mets.
Right. And mind you,
Thanks
it's
for
funny.
Coming.
I find it funny how, if you remember the last episode, you're like, yeah, this just isn't normal for me. I'm just feeling really
all
positive.
Over. All of it.
Spirits uplifted.
It's all over.
It is all over.
All of it.
It's done. Here we go.
Here we go.
Welcome to Panic City. She actually put that in her notes. I just need you guys to know that.
Welcome
it's in
to
all
Panic
capital
City.
letters. Honestly, the way that these notes are laid out, really distressing.
All-time
I must say.
heater.
Really distressing. As many of you may know, the Mets did win the last two games against the Braves. We're not really here to discuss that.
Not interested.
But we did want to discuss the fact that Griffin Canning ruptured his left Achilles in the final game of the Braves series, and he is in fact out for the year. So that was obviously a tough pill to swallow.
I have to feel for a guy like Griffin Canning having the best season of his career, and he just go out there and, you could see it on the SNY replays. His Achilles just ripped. Running off the mound to field, there was like a ground ball in the infield situation. Good night to his Achilles. See you next year, Griffin.
It was gnarly. I honestly couldn't even watch it.
I don't like watching a ruptured Achilles.
But also,
Tyrese Halliburton, same thing. Ugh.
And why is there always one person who is like putting up the clip in slow-mo? Maybe I'm just not interested in seeing all that.
I'm not interested in
and
seeing
that's like
all that.
mean to the why do we have to do that?
Do I need to watch it rupture in real time?
No, literally everyone's like, if you look at this marker, you will see.
Nope.
I'm like, we don't, but I don't want to see it.
I am all set.
I believe you and the doctors. That's just it.
I'm good.
If they say it's ruptured, it's ruptured. Hoping for the best for him. She also put in her notes here, she literally wrote, somebody sedate me. I'm just gonna say that so you all know, because this is what happened. The Mets then, okay, this happens, you're thinking, do it for Griffin.
Do it for Griffin. Griffin's Achilles is ripped.
It could have really been good motivation. I honestly think you could have been like, oh, this is the point where it's a turning point, you know?
I need to take a deep breath.
Somebody else doesn't have an opportunity. We get this opportunity. There could have been There could have been a lot of things. Instead, what happens is that the Mets get swept by the last place Pirates and are outscored by a run differential of 30-4 over 3 games. I'm living in an alternate reality.
I just need you all to understand something, okay? Being swept and getting outscored 30-4 in 3 games would be a bad day under any team circumstances. That would be bad if you were facing the Dodgers or the Yankees. This was the Pittsburgh Pirates. In case you were wondering, the Pirates, prior to this weekend, were averaging under 4 runs per game, 3.9. They were on pace for 100 losses this year. They are in last place in the NL Central. We said last week, this seemed like the reset series, right? Okay, well, if all goes to hell against the Braves, at least you have the Pirates coming down the pipe. Yeah, no, they had the most lopsided 3-game series score in Mets history.
It was historic. It was historically bad. I mean, they couldn't compete with the Rockies right now. It's getting to that point.
Or the 2024 White Sox, or your grandma's rec team.
Right. Oh my God, don't talk about my grandma's rec team like that.
Sorry.
She's working really hard. No, I agree. I think it's disgusting. It's horrific. They're gonna make a documentary about it if nothing changes pretty soon. It's gonna be called The Collapse of the 2025 Mets. They're gonna interview Steve Cohen. They're gonna interview everybody who's involved. They're going to interview Steve Cohen's wife, and she doesn't deserve this. Of all the people.
No, not Alex.
Not Alex, okay? We need to get it back on track. Do it for Alex. Do it for whoever you need to do it for. This is a very upsetting situation. And we're going to kind of just bring you through some of the bits and bops of how this really all escalated. Friday was a 9-1 loss. It was David Peterson who started this game. And again, it was really a tough day for him. 4.2 innings pitched, 7 hits, 5 earned runs, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. Of all the things, right?
All of it.
It's like this was the guy who was continuing to do well. This was the bright spot, the shining star, the hope. And hope is not a strategy, and that's it.
To me, I think when you're a team and you're going as bad as this has been going for the last 2 weeks or so, to see David Peterson go out there on Friday and for him get shelled, right? 5 earned runs in, less than 5 innings. That to me is an indicator and a sign like what is going on here. You can pick your spots. You can have your runners in scoring position problem. You could have your issues out of the bullpen. But when your best starter, arguably for the last 2 years, he was in that conversation last year too, goes out there and can't figure it out twice in a row. Like what is going on here?
I loved him last year. Like I have always been a Peterson stan. I still am, but it really is like there are no bright spots. Have you ever seen that meme that circulates on Mets Twitter from time to time? And it's essentially a couple of different pillars that are all sort of rotating up and down, meaning like if the starting pitching is going
switchers,
well,
yeah.
then the runners in scoring position and hitting with runners in scoring position is not going well. Or if the fielding's going well, then there's an issue with the hitting. Whatever it is, it's like never all high at the same time. They are literally like the switch is off on all of them. All of them are like as low as it can go.
We're at 0 across the board.
We're at 0.
Rock bottom, nobody in the ballpark.
It's to the point where if I was somebody on this team, I'd be like, why are we even showing up to work right now if we're not going to work hard?
Well, that's what was so disturbing about the Pirates series is like they didn't show up to play these games.
Right.
You're outscored 30-4 against the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Why even
just
go?
Average 10 runs a night on you. What?
I mean, you're wasting
nobody in the ballpark
from the pilot who was in charge of the flight. I mean,
everybody's
the gas. It was a waste.
Waste
it was
of
a
time.
Waste of a trip. Shouldn't have even gone if you're going to play like that. I need to see some heart, some hustle, something else. So then Blade Tidwell goes in. I mean, that's a big problem that I think is worth discussing as well.
Blade Tidwell's a mess. Blade Tidwell's evidently not ready. He has like a 9.82 ERA in the couple of appearances he's made. I like the guy. He seems nice. He's not ready for the big leagues. Send him back down. Bring me Nolan McLean. Bring me Brandon Sproat has not been good in AAA this year, but he just had a really good start, probably his best of the year. I'm going to need to see something that's not Blade Tidwell. Now, we'll get into this in a minute, but another problem here, because when you suck so bad as a team and you go through a million pitchers to get through 9 innings a night, that wears on your pitching staff and your bullpen when you're using 6-7 guys to get through 9 innings of play. That's a problem. So the Mets have also faced this little problem where they got a one-way express shuttle flight to Syracuse with switching these guys out, whether it's Brandon Waddell or Blade Tidwell. I'm not gonna, sugarcoat things. These guys have been put in a tough spot. Doesn't change the fact that Blade Tidwell has underwhelmed severely.
It also doesn't change the fact that right now, at the place where things are, you just need to see things that are different. And Nolan McLean is different from what you've been seeing. Nobody wants to see Blade Tidwell out there again. Need to see something else here. I don't know what's going to be the catalyst. I almost wish there was some sort of a grimace thing or something that I could even feel hopeful about. I'm not seeing that this year. I need to see some progress and improvement. So that was Friday, 9-1 loss. We move on to Saturday, 9-2 loss.
Speaking of people I'm ready to never see again.
I mean, Paul Blackburn, his days are numbered at this point. There was an hour and a half rain delay. To be fair, not sure why they're putting him back out there. Having a hard time grasping why that made sense.
It's raining for an hour and a half in the beautiful city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The ballpark, it's glistening. It looks nice. I'm sitting here at work getting ready for the game to start.
Great park.
All right, we're supposed to start at like 4. Game gets started, or 4:30. Game gets started at like 6. Why on God's planet of Earth is Paul Blackburn trotting back? Well, not game gets started. I'm sorry. They did play for like a minute in the first inning, so Paul Blackburn did start the game. Mm-hmm. Then the rain comes. They stop. They trot Paul back out there again afterwards, which was obviously not a good plan. Carlos Mendoza said afterwards that his threshold for not bringing Blackburn back out there was 6:05. The game started at 6. Paul Blackburn was 5 minutes away from his limit, and I'm 5 minutes away from mine. Paul Blackburn needs to get sent to Siberia. I never want to see Paul again. I have had enough of the Paul Blackburn experience. Out of the bullpen, starting games, enough of Paul Blackburn. You cannot be a serious contending baseball team, and you're running out Paul Blackburn.
No, honestly, it was an embarrassment. But again, Mendoza, what are we talking about? 6:05. At some point, it's like, are you just making stuff up?
Who decided 6:05? Why wasn't it 6?
What, like, just for the purposes of timing, that's just how normal things work. You never say to somebody, I'm arriving somewhere at 6:30. 6:35. It's gonna be 6:30. Just choose a normal number.
Yeah.
Choose 6 o'clock.
Let's round up.
And then perhaps we wouldn't have been in that situation. The point is,
Paul could not record an out. That's all I have to say to you all. Paul went out there after the rain delay, could not record an out. Now, I understand that he warmed up for the game, and then he had to sit around for an hour and a half. I mean, surely he could have stayed warm during that hour and a half. I know you don't want to, throw out your arm during that time, but stay warm, stay ready. No, Paul was out there ready to make Ke'Bryan Hayes and Brian Reynolds look like Babe Ruth.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. He gave up 3 earned runs on 6 hits. Again, I still am really not ready to sit here and actually say that was all his fault. It's just like, again, even with Carlos Mendoza, I'm seeing some things that I just feel like are outside of his norm, or outside of his character, his usual aura, his usual charm. I'm not feeling so charmed by him right now. I'm not feeling so charmed by this team. That brings us to the fact that the Mets then say, we've had enough.
Of Paul.
Of all of it. And they have a team meeting after the game. All right. In years past, when they've had a team meeting, that has really been the catalyst to some very special things. Take a breath. You got to take a breath for this part, because
I'm ready.
A lot's going to happen from this point on. They have a team meeting. To no one's surprise, it is initiated by Lindor and Alonso. According to sources, about 6 to 7 players spoke, including, how about that, Jeff McNeil and Juan Soto. Brandon Nimmo said he did not. That doesn't surprise me. He seems more like a lead by example kind of guy. Lindor said it was about lifting each other up, having each other's backs. It happened once after the Jorge Lopez incident last year. The question was, could it work again? And that was the question that everyone went to sleep with that night.
In my notes, in case you were wondering, I said Lindor said it was about lifting each other up and having each other's backs. Okay, what about hitting the ball? Some of this is, okay, obviously you needed to gather the clubhouse after where things have been, after losing 12 of 15, after the backslide that we have unfortunately experienced over the last 2 weeks. To no one's surprise, it was initiated by Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso. Love to see that. Love to see that Juan Soto spoke. Love to see that Jeff McNeil spoke. I don't know if, frankly, it did enough to change things. I mean, the minute I saw, because I was kind of, again, monitoring this at work on Saturday in real time, so they go out there after the rain delay, they suck it up. Brazaban has a meltdown. I can't even get into him right now. And then after the game, you're seeing from all the beat writers, right? Laura Albanese, Mike Puma, the usual suspects, Anthony DiComo, the Mets are in a closed-door meeting. The media cannot come in right away after the game. The doors are shut. The conclave is happening. They are having the meeting of the minds. To be frank, you're supposed to do those meetings as a Major League Baseball team, traditionally, when your ace is scheduled to pitch the next day, because you're supposed to do it on a night that you know you might have a really good chance to win the next day. Now, unfortunately for the Mets, Frankie Montas was scheduled to pitch the next day, and he's about the furthest thing from an ace that I can draw up in my head.
I was going to say, that's a jester.
But for hell or high water, they had to do it, right? They're in the middle. At this point, they've lost 2 out of 3 to the Pirates. They're working on a sweep. You gotta change something. You gotta have some sort of energy change. And I don't think that this meeting accomplished that. Now, obviously, it's been 1 game since then, and Frankie Montas was pitching. So maybe the meeting will translate well this week against the Brewers and the Yankees. But I think for Mets fans, it's like, right, you've heard about this in 2024. Lindor calls the meeting after the Lopez debacle, and everything turns around, and Grimace is born, and the whole thing. It all goes swimmingly from there. To see, I think Sunday they went out there and they lost the game in the first inning. Somehow, some way, after this 2 out of 3 against the Pirates, after Saturday night in Pittsburgh, the worst was still yet to come.
To hear my favorite phrase twisted in such a way, but it's so accurate that there's nothing I can really say back to you. A part of me wonders, and I'm sure we'll never really know the answer to this. You don't always obviously know exactly what happened in those closed-door meetings, right? But about lifting each other up, at some point it's like, how about some accountability? It can't be positive all the time. There have to be times where if you're the captain, I know he's not, but in my mind he is, you're going in there, if you're a leader even, somebody out of those 6 or 7, I hope, was the bad cop. It's not to say that everybody should be tearing each other down, but at what point is enough enough? I actually think sometimes people respond well to, adding a little fuel to the fire. End of the day, these guys all know they love each other. These are people who love you, who can say these things to you. Like, there needs to be a little bit more accountability here. I don't know what was said in that meeting either. I do feel a little bit badly, and I feel like this is not exactly indicative of what's going to happen with the Mets, for the next week, let's say. It was a 12-1 loss. It was Frankie Montas' fault. Nobody else actually got a chance to really try and implement necessarily any of the changes that they said they would make when they already lost the game in the first inning. Like, what? You know what I mean? Whose balloon wouldn't be popped after that point?
Listen, the runners in scoring position thing, they scored 4 runs over 3 games. So let's not just gloss over that. That is a problem. But to think about, and somebody was saying, somebody on SNY, it was Jose Reyes. He was in the SNY studios for the post-game and pre-game shows with Gary Apple this weekend because Todd Zeal was out. And he said after that game, after Sunday's game, which we'll go through unfortunately in a minute, that as a position player, sure, they go out there and they put up 1 run, but when your starting pitcher goes out there the night after you had a, rah-rah meeting like that, let's get it together meeting of the minds, and loses you the game essentially in the first inning, of course you're going to feel deflated. It's like you just pumped the balloon back up and somebody just deflated it, popped it. Good night.
100%. There's no other way to describe it. I wish so badly that first inning would have went differently, because perhaps the way that the Mets players would have responded would have been different. It's a baseball game. 5 runs is a lot to overcome. Who is really I'm not saying it's never happened, but who is overcoming that on any day? It's a tough hill to climb, especially when you're already in a hole.
I think my biggest concern with the Mets is the lack of response this season. We've touched on it, but last year they responded to everything. They would fall in a deficit against the Dodgers, against the best team in baseball, a 5, 6, 4-run hole, and they would come back and they would tie the game and they would hit with runners in scoring position with 2 outs, and they were in it even if they lost the game. I am not seeing that from this year's team, and that concerns me. To just wrap up the player meeting thing and what you said about accountability, I think that's absolutely the term. I am ready to see some fire from this team. I don't know if that's toxic, and I don't know if maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but I want to see Juan Soto, and not even just Juan Soto. Juan Soto gets thrown around too much here. I want to see Brandon Nimmo go out there and spike his helmet and get pissed off when Pete Alonso struck out for the 4th time in the game, slam his bat. I am ready to see some anger. You're finally seeing it from Carlos Mendoza, who was ejected in one of these games for arguing balls and strikes. Whether that's a good indicator or not of the team's headspace, somebody's got to be like, what the hell?
I know. If not, what is going to happen here? Because again, the funny and the frustrating part of the whole thing is I need you guys to understand from a record standpoint, this is, believe it or not, actually still one of the best teams in baseball. Not the best, but I think somewhere in at least the top, 7, let's say. Or I mean, this is a high-end, high-quality team. They're what, maybe 10 games above 500 right now?
They're 11 games over 500
11.
still, and 2 games back in the division.
You guys.
Now, does that speak more to the Philadelphia Phillies and the strength of the division than the prowess of the New York Mets? Probably. But, like, it feels like the sky is falling, and somehow they are 2 games out of first place. I need everybody to lock in.
11 games above 500. This entire stretch you could put behind you, and you would still be in a really good spot if that ended now, today. I just don't know if I really feel that way. I also get that there are some other factors here, and it's the kind of stuff we're going to go through, right? They did lose some starting pitching that they really needed.
Yeah.
Kodai Senga is not here anymore. Sean Manaea is still not there. But honestly, Sean Manaea wasn't there for a while, and it was still okay. I don't know what the F is going on. I really don't. I mean, I get the whole runners in scoring position argument. I do think that there is some merit to that, but it does come down to the pitching. I agree that last year the Mets were able to overcome deficits, but this is not 12-1 is not a deficit. That's embarrassing.
12-1 is you gave up, and Travis Jankowski was pitching in the 9th inning. That's what 12-1 is.
You gave up. 12-1 is you gave up.
Where I am finding concern is, I think this was a really eye-opening stat for me to discover, that the Mets went 21-9 in the first month of the season in the first 30 games. Best team in baseball. Things were bright and shiny in Queens. In the 55 games since then, they are a sub 500 team, 27-28. So that leaves me with, was this a really, really good team that is in a slump? Or is this a bad team that had a really good first month of the season?
That remains to be seen. The next month is where you make that determination, quite honestly. Because 27-28, again, that's 55 games. It is tough. They had not a good first month, a great first month. Nobody thought that they were continuing on that pace, 21-9. But to go from 21-9 to below 500 is so defeating. I just can't even bear it.
I think that first month and the first 2 months with how well the pitching was doing really allowed us all to gloss over a lot of their very real problems. And like you just said, July and August, the next 2 months, are where teams either find their grit and pick themselves up by their bootstraps like the Mets did last year in 2024, or they sink. So it's sink or swim. I know the trade deadline, and I know everyone's going to be like, okay, you have the deadline to make moves. Yeah, and they need to make a lot of them. And there's been reports this week that they are planning on being quite active at the deadline, as I should hope they are.
Especially because everybody in this organization understands the fact that in the beginning of the season and for that first month, everyone's thinking, wow, this team has a real chance to win the World Series. It is feeling like we are worlds away from that right now. It almost feels like that's not possible.
I know it's been 2 weeks, but I think you have to get into, right? Let's talk about the hitting for 1 second, because we've talked about the pitching a little bit.
Yep.
I mean, this was a lineup that was supposed to be one of the best lineups in baseball, maybe the second best behind the Dodgers on paper. And I know that on paper doesn't always work out. I'm well aware of that fact. The Mets are hitting 200 with runners on second and third in scoring position. That is ahead of only the Pirates and the Rockies. If you are the New York Mets higher-ups, you have to look at the names, the talent, and the pedigree past that you have in this starting 9, night in and night out, and ask yourself, what the hell is going on and who has failed these players? Now, I'm not taking all the blame off the players. These are professionals being paid millions of dollars to hit the ball, and they're not doing that. But at the same time, everybody's starting to get antsy. All right, are we going to fire Eric Chavez? Are we going to fire the hitting coach? Well, apparently not, according to Andy Martino, who said that, reported today or yesterday, that the Mets are, quote, happy with their major league coaching staff. All right, great. That's a vote of confidence for Chavez's, job security. But I mean, this is a lineup that you have multi-all-stars in here. You have MVPs and Juan Soto. Like, what are we doing? You have Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor. You have 4 players that have over 15 home runs. That is the only team in baseball that has that, in Lindor, Soto, Alonso, and Nimmo.
I know.
What is going on?
It's like the highs are so high and the lows are so low. It honestly doesn't make sense. Do I think that the Mets have the talent to be that 21-9 team? I do. But talent alone is clearly not enough here. Baseball's a weird sport. It's a wacky sport. I get that. Like, night in and night out, there are going to be some swings. But I even felt it last week, and I feel it even more now this week. This is not a swing. It's more like a shift. Like, there's a real shift that happened here, and there's going to have to take a real shift to get it back to where it once was. I do think that the pitching still, in my mind, is the biggest issue with that. I honestly don't think, even if the Mets were hitting well, that if you look at these scores from the past 3 days that anything good was happening there. What I need to see the most at this point, even just to start, as far as how do we get back on track here, I actually need to even see a close loss. Like, I actually need to see a loss by 1 run.
I need to see some fight in the 9th inning. I need to see something.
In the 9th, I mean,
I am grasping at the smallest of straws.
In the first, in the second, I mean, it's like, I need to see fight, period. And then I think you talk about, okay, how do we get back on track here? These games, and I understand that it's a series, it's whatever. But these games were not competitive, and for it to happen 3 times in a row is just really unacceptable. Like, these are professional players. There comes a point.
I know it's been 2 weeks, but I think the boat has legitimately taken on some water. There are doubts beginning to creep into people's minds about the capability of this lineup and this team and whether or not they are really going to make a deep run in the postseason. And I know it's July 1st, so I know all of that. I just think, I'm harping so much on the runners and scoring position problem, but if you are Eric Chavez, not to say that it's all his fault, and the rest of the Mets staff, you are hand-gifted, hand-crafted, a lineup that 1 through 6 is one of the most beautiful ones in baseball, with Soto and Lindor and Alonso, and it's just stunning, right? And I'm saying 1 through 6 because I'm well aware that 7, 8, 9, night in and night out is not stunning. The furthest thing from stunning. Some young players in there who have yet to figure it out, which we're actually going to talk about in a moment. But 1 through 6, you have major league all-stars, okay? And this is what you're dealing with. We're hitting 200 with runners in scoring position. At some point, somebody has to answer for that. And I'm not only saying it's Eric Chavez, Carlos Mendoza. Somebody's got to actually give me a response as to why that's happening.
I understand that. I see why you want accountability from even people who aren't the players, because at some point, like you said, you almost do wonder, is someone failing them? Again, like Juan Soto got it back on track, but I'm not going to lie to you. I felt very defeated when he was slumping to start, and I'm hearing all the people who are involved with Yankees sports talk saying that really never happened to him when he was on the Yankees. So why did it happen at all when he was on the Mets? Again, I know out of all the people that we've been discussing, he's
been Juan Solo lately.
Yeah, he has been Juan Solo, totally, and he's actually been doing a great job. But again, it's like, you would have thought that was the missing piece, that could have been the thing that brought all of this together, was a star. But now you have a star too, and it's just not enough. So at this point, maybe you're right to say that a bigger change needs to be made. Perhaps it is somebody on the staff. I'm not sure. I'm not ready to go to... I think Mendoza is great. Honestly, I do.
too.
I'm not calling for his head by any means. I actually really think he should stay. But yeah, I do think at some point the hitting, and honestly, I think the hitting actually perhaps would have been addressed even sooner if it weren't for the fact that really the Mets are just giving up so many runs that feels like the most glaring issue of all right now.
I am calling for some sort of change, but I do just want to say that those of you on Mets Twitter who are calling for Mendoza's head, you need to get a grip, okay? The team's in a 2-week slide, get a grip.
Calm down. Wait, us saying that after but actually calm down.
I need to get a grip.
Yeah, but really, you know what I mean? That's too much.
No, I agree. That's way too much. He took you to the NLCS in his first year. That's just, we need to get a hold of ourselves. At the same time,
we're not going to Tom Thibodeau the guy.
We're not going to Tom Thibodeau Carlos Mendoza. No. Don't do that to Carlos Mendoza. Anyway, at the same time, it's like you said, nobody's firing on any cylinder. It's a mess. The runners and scoring position is a problem. The pitching is a problem. Now, the good news for the pitching is a few things. A, tonight's rain out, which we haven't even really touched on. The Mets rained out tonight, Tuesday, against the Brewers. They were off on Monday. All of a sudden, your very depleted, very tired, overworked bullpen has now had 2 full days, 3 when you get to tomorrow, of rest. That's a really good thing, right? I know you have a doubleheader tomorrow. You're probably going to have to use some arms. But the bullpen needed rest, and they got it. So the rain out was almost a gift from the gods, in my opinion. Secondarily, we have some actual reinforcements on the way. Sean Manaea is making what could be his final rehab start tonight in AA Binghamton, meaning he could join the Mets next week in Baltimore. Kodai Senga also throwing a bullpen tomorrow, and if all of that goes well, he will be ready to begin a rehab assignment. So Senga and Manaea, 2 top-tier, high-caliber, frontline starting pitchers ready to come back. That's a good thing. On the other hand of that, if you are David Stearns and you are the people who make the decisions for the Mets, you have got to figure out what the hell to do with Paul Blackburn and Frankie Montas, because neither of those 2 men deserve to have a starting 5 spot in a professional rotation right now, let alone that of the New York Mets.
I agree. Here's the other thing we wanted to discuss. What is going on with the inability to develop young players? This is something Ashley put down that I thought was really interesting when you're looking at guys like Francisco Alvarez, who were demoted to AAA. Luis Angel Acuna demoted to AAA. And then you have the gauntlet of Beatty, Maruccio, Tidwell, and Vientos, among others. But, that was one of those things where for a while in the beginning of the season, particularly with Beatty, Maruccio, Vientos, and Acuna, we're thinking they have more options than they could necessarily ask for.
What are we gonna do with all this talent?
Literally. Sorry. But it's so true. It's like, oh my God, how is there gonna be a spot for all of these fantastic players? And now, again, it's just like adding insult to injury where quite honestly, Jeff McNeil outperformed the lot.
I know.
The lot.
We don't like to give Jeff McNeil cred, but Jeff McNeil's been stepping up. He's out there in center field. Jeff McNeil's like 33. All right. For a minute, I am going to give Jeff McNeil some flowers.
I mean, the catch.
I know.
Please.
No, I mean, something has to, then you look at all of this, right? All the struggles at the major league level, and you think about, seriously, talking about accountability and someone has to answer for something. Well, someone in the Mets organization has to answer for why you had these, 3-4 really vaunted infield prospects, right? I mean, Acuna, the least among them. We heard so much about Beatty. Vientos was so good last year. I know the sophomore slump, it happens, okay? Ronnie Mauricio has come up, and I know he's only been around for a few weeks, but has largely underwhelmed in that time frame. Why can we not develop these young position players? We've seen the ability to develop young pitching in the last decade or so, and I don't even want to go there right now because some of the young pitching, Tidwell and Sproat, have not been doing well either. But what is with the ability? I mean, none of these guys are panning out, and honestly, this might sound a little harsh.
I knew what you were going to say.
What?
Are you going to say trade one of them?
Well, first, yes, that is where I was going. At the deadline, they're all high contenders to be moved. But second of all, Mauricio aside, he's the only one that I'll give a hall pass that hasn't seen enough time. Everybody else has had their cup of tea. They have had their time. Vientos especially, he had the whole season up last year. Beatty's been up for long enough at this point. Acuna's been up for long enough at this point. Francisco Alvarez was your starting catcher for 2 or 3 years, and now he's in AAA because I don't even know what the hell happened there. Who is developing these guys? What is going on organizationally in this pipeline that they are not able to take the step from being a AAA bona fide star to a star at the major league level?
I'm not sure. And I think that that's a question worth discussing because end of the day, there's a part of me that actually feels like if at first we thought that this was going to be a plethora of options and now we're feeling like nobody is really turning out to be what we thought they would be, yeah, it probably is time to say goodbye to somebody if it really means that there will be a chance that we could have success now. What I'm sick of in Mets land at this point is really any more chatter about, well, next year or in the future, things could be different. Do you know how many years of that I've sat through?
This is the future. We're here.
Like all those times where people are like, once we make all these chess moves, then it's going to be our year. That time is legitimately right now.
Right now. This is your window.
We talked about it last year, right? Talked about it last year. Oh, no, this was never supposed to be the year. It's supposed to be next year. But we're here now.
I am looking forward to running this clip back after the deadline because I would be a little bit shocked if I was wrong. I know David Stearns has a reputation for being measured and for holding on to prospects and for not making any rash moves. I just want to say it's not rash. Your starting pitching has been a problem and your bullpen's kind of sucked. It is time to move. You have a glut of young position players that could still pan out, that other teams may be interested in their potential. You cannot hold on to all of them at this trade deadline. 2 or 3 of them have got to go.
Well, the thing is, I think that what it's time for is a bold move and a big move. I think for a while, David Stearns was sort of branding on the fact that he could make the most of a fixer-upper. But honestly, in a time of crisis, I didn't need Dickie Lovelady as my hero.
These ladies don't love Dickie Lovelady.
No, they do not.
These ladies do not.
I mean, it was villainous what was going on there. I needed something substantial. I needed something that felt like a big move, and that wasn't it.
And let's be real with ourselves. David Stearns has been working on the fixer-upper for a while, and we've been a big proponent of that. But he has the budget of a billionaire.
So I'm not, like, you don't have to buy an old truck every single time. Like, you could just go out and get a Tesla and see what happens.
If the roof is leaking, instead of patching the roof, you could get a new roof. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. I know Juan Soto. In a realistic headspace, I'm just saying, I think what do you have a lot of that's valuable? Young position players. How valuable are they? I don't know after their major league performances, but you're going to have to use something at the trade deadline, and I am ready to see a sizable move and to move some of these guys. Because what does it benefit you to go into next year and be like, we still have Mauricio and Acuna and Beatty and Vientos and this? I mean, at some point.
It's always about wave of the future, I feel like sometimes with the Mets organization, but I don't want to think about the future anymore. And I do appreciate the fact that David Stearns has a fixer-upper mentality, but we cannot be out here putting Band-Aids on bullet holes.
No.
I mean,
No,
something needs to
literally.
be done, you know? Like, it's just not enough. And I agree with you. I honestly think at this point, perhaps that actually is a good problem to have. If you really do have too many guys, they're not really all being utilized anyway in the way that I think people thought they would be. Why not use them to potentially see some more success now? But I don't know. I'm sure some people would disagree with me and be like, that's a mistake. I'm not saying I'd never want to think about the future. But like, don't you all just want to see the Mets be freaking successful? Don't you all want to see that like once?
I'm ready to live in the here and now. And just to clarify, out of all of those guys' names that we've been mentioning, I am not ready to let Mark Vientos go, and I will be quite upset if that's the shoe that ends up dropping, because I think he actually has the most potential out of all of them. And what we saw from him last year, both in the playoffs and the regular season, and the pop that he had, I'm not ready to end the Mark Vientos experiment, because sophomore slumps are a noted thing. I'm not giving him a hall pass. He's been terrible this year, but I need to see more of Vientos, and I don't want to see him go.
So who's going? Beatty,
Mauricio, maybe I don't know. You got to do what you got to do at some point.
Yeah, I get it. Hey, no hard feelings here. A little bit, maybe. I really loved Beatty. I was hoping for the best, but I see what you mean. I do think if you really look at everybody, Vientos has proved the most. In my mind, I can't get over the thought that Beatty has the most upside. I don't know why I think that. It's Beatty, not as though the directions have all pointed that way. It's just a gut feeling I've had from the start. But again, I mean, I would probably go with Acuna. I'd probably say trade Acuna.
Beatty is probably going to be the next Justin Turner. That's all I have to say. Anyway, moving on from that whole debacle, because Alvarez is, of course, they demoted him a week later. He's hitting home runs in AAA. He's doing great. So maybe Alvarez will get his spark back. Haven't given up on Alvarez, I would like to say, but do certainly want to see him get things together in the minor leagues. And like we mentioned, Brandon Sproat had his best start of the year, 6 shutout innings, 6 strikeouts. So if either of those guys can be a factor down the stretch, that would be a positive. Now, we just complained and whined our asses off for about 20 to 30 minutes. And to wrap up, I have positive news for all of you. The Mets this week have to face the first place Yankees and the second place in the NL Central Brewers, but they're a very good team behind the Cubs by 2 games. And they may have, maybe a little bit jumping the gun saying this, but he's made 2 really good big league starts, a guy who's going to end up in contention for the NL Rookie of the Year. Does that all sound promising?
I was going to say, so the good news is that you decided you're not going to go to the game, right?
The good news is that I'm going home for 4th of July weekend and was considering going to a Mets game at Citi Field. Oh, the 4th of July, the Mets are home. It's a Subway Series. It all looks so promising.
What's more America
Until you
than
look
that?
at what's more America than that, until you look at the probables and see that Frankie Montas is pitching. And I will not be wasting my money, time, or effort on getting to Citi Field, if that's the case.
Ashley looked at those probables and she said probably not.
No, I'm I'm not kidding. I saw Frankie Montas and I said, you can miss me with that.
That's so funny.
So the Mets will play the Brewers in a doubleheader tomorrow to make up for tonight. In the second game, they are facing Jacob. This is a mess of a name. I think it's Mizorowski.
A mess of a name.
I have a mess of a name, so I get it.
No, she really can say that.
Yeah,
You know
I
what
get to
mean?
say that out of everyone.
got cred.
Through 2 big league starts, he has really been fantastic. He's given up like 2 earned runs. He's a 1.64 ERA, so the Mets should have a good time with that. Then in the Subway Series, like I said, over 4th of July weekend, they face the Yankees, who, by the way, the Yankees have been in a little bit of a downside lately. They've won like 6 of their last 10, but the Mets and Yankees had 2 of the 3 best records in baseball on June 13th, and since then, the Mets are 3-13, the Yankees are 6-12. So, been a tough time in New York. Jazz Chisholm has been tearing the cover off the ball. Goldschmidt, Bellinger have been good. Of course, you have Aaron Judge. And the projected starters, lucky for everyone, on 4th of July weekend, like I previously mentioned. Paul Blackburn will start on the 4th versus Marcus Stroman, former old friend. That is just the greatest pitching matchup to celebrate the country's Independence Day that I've ever seen. And then Frankie Montas versus Carlos Rodon on the 5th, and Max Fried versus Clay Holmes on the 6th. If you're the Mets, I don't like any of those matchups in your favor, and I will not be in attendance on July the 5th.
I think that it makes sense that you would not have wasted your time nor your money to be there for that experience.
Thank you.
However, I feel like the most Mets thing that the Mets could possibly do would be to get swept by the Pirates and then sweep the Yankees and the Brewers. It would be hilarious.
Bold prediction season.
You got to admit. I mean, at this point, I kind of just feel like if they're not actually going to do anything to make it happen, I may as well manifest it.
I like manifestation.
I'm hitting a spiritual sort of moment in this whole situation. I'm turning to prayer at this time. And I am hoping that things get better for them. And that's really all I can do. I have to just try and find a little bit of belief somewhere in my Mets fandom.
I mean, we will see how much worse it can get in the next week. Hopefully that's not the case, but we'll see. With the Brewers and the Yankees, we will, like we just mentioned, we will be out of office for the 4th of July. So we'll probably catch you guys next week on the flip side of the Subway Series. But we'll see what happens in that time frame.
By the way, an exciting guest who is coming. I feel we may as well at least promote that now.
Yes.
We are actually next week scheduled to have Keith Rad joining the show, who has been working with Howie Rose for the past few years, and he's doing Mets play-by-play on the radio. Had a really cool and interesting story as far as how he got there. He was doing some play-by-play for football at Wagner College, worked really hard to get this opportunity, and now he finally has it. So if you guys know him, great. If you don't, you're going to get to meet him. And either way, he's somebody who has, for sure, inside insight as to what is happening with this team, what's been going wrong, and potentially even some ideas or solutions as to how they can change it. So thank you guys so much, as always, for joining us. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We so appreciate you being here, and we will see you back here when the next thing happens.
Step right up and beat the Mets.